The Theft of the Forbidden City by Johnson Davies. Chapter 1. The Emperor's Arrival. Beijing never saw it coming. At 2:17 a.m., the Forbidden City vanished. No tremor, no explosion, no warning. One moment, the Imperial Palace stood in silence beneath the haze of surveillance drones and moonlight. The next, it was gone, lifted clean from the earth, leaving behind a crater of shattered stone and scorched air. The first to respond was a sanitation drone, rerouted from Tiananmen Square. It hovered over the void, scanned for debris, and flagged the anomaly as unauthorized excavation. By the time human eyes reached the scene, the crater had already cooled. Satellite footage showed only a blur, a distortion in the atmosphere, like heat, shimmer, or a cloaking field. No propulsion signature, no known aircraft. Just a shape, impossibly large, rising into orbit. The Ministry of State Security locked down the city within minutes. Streets were emptied, airspace sealed, every camera feed scrubbed. But the footage had already leaked. By dawn, the world knew. The Forbidden City had been stolen, and someone had taken it whole. In low Earth orbit, the thief admired his prize. Emperor Dravel of the Ninth Dominion stood at the edge of his observation deck, arms folded behind his back, eyes fixed on the floating monument, now suspended in a containment field. The Forbidden City rotated slowly, its ancient courtyards and red walls preserved in perfect detail. "Forbidden," he said, savoring the word. Such a beautiful designation. His archivist, a six-eyed creature named Wurex, hovered nearby. "It was not defended, Your Eminence. No planetary shields, no orbital deterrence. The extraction was trivial." Dravel turned. "Trivial is not the point. Forbidden is." He walked the perimeter of the containment field, studying the architecture. They built this to keep others out, to protect secrets, to preserve power. And yet they left it unguarded. That contradiction pleases me. Rex hesitated. "Shall I catalogue it with the others?" Dravel smiled. "No, this one is different. This one stays visible." He gestured toward the viewport where dozens of other stolen monuments drifted in the dark, hidden behind cloaking fields, sealed in vaults. The Eiffel Tower, the Library of Alexandria, a fragment of Mecca, all forbidden, all taken. But the Forbidden City would remain on display. "Let them see what I've taken," Dravel said. "Let them feel the absence." Back on Earth, panic spread. The Chinese government denied everything. The crater was a sinkhole. The footage was fake. The Forbidden City was undergoing renovations. But the silence from Beijing was louder than any denial. And in a basement beneath the Ministry of Culture, a disgraced urban planner named Lei Zhang stared at a satellite image of the missing monument and whispered, "He's collecting them." He didn't know who, he didn't know why, but he knew one thing. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be insignificant. Chapter 2. The Ministry of Absences. Lei Zhang hadn't slept in 36 hours. He sat alone in a concrete room beneath the Ministry of Culture, surrounded by flickering monitors and half-drunk cans of Red Bull. The crater where the Forbidden City had stood was still on screen, rotating slowly in thermal view. No heat signatures, no seismic residue, just absence. The ministry called it unauthorized displacement. Lei called it theft. He hadn't been a planner in years, not since the Tianjin incident, but someone upstairs remembered his obsession with architectural anomalies and his theory that someone was collecting them. Now he was back, unofficially. No clearance, no badge, just a terminal and a mandate. Find out what happened. The door hissed open. A woman entered, crisp suit, no name tag. "You're Zhang." Lei nodded. "Your theory?" "The one about monument theft. You think it's real?" "I think someone's been testing extraction protocols for years." Small sites, remote temples. Then they scaled up. She dropped a folder on the desk. Inside, satellite images, the Hagia Sophia, the great Zimbabwe ruins, the Temple of Heaven, all gone, all erased from official records. Lay exhaled. They're not just stealing buildings. They're erasing history. The woman didn't react. We intercepted a transmission. It's not human. It's a declaration. She slid a tablet across the desk. On screen, a message scrolled in Mandarin, then English, then Arabic, then a dozen other languages. The Emperor of the Ninth Dominion claims this forbidden city as his own. Forbidden things belong to him. You may keep what is permitted. Lay stared at the words. He's not just stealing. He's making a point. The woman nodded. We need to know what he'll take next. In orbit, Emperor Dravel paced the length of his command chamber, flanked by his silent guards, tall insectoid creatures with mirrored faces and ceremonial blades. Rex hovered nearby, projecting a list of Earth's remaining forbidden zones. Several candidates, Your Eminence. The Vatican Archives, Area 51, the North Korean Demilitarized Zone, the Svalbard Seed Vault. Dravel waved a hand. Too obvious, too predictable, too expected. He paused before a hologram of a small, nondescript building in Geneva. What is this? Rex blinked. A vault. Contains banned scientific research, genetic archives, forbidden experiments. Dravel smiled. Forbidden? Perfect. Prepare the harvesters. Back in Beijing, Lei stared at the list of vanished sites. He highlighted the common thread. Places humans weren't allowed to enter. Zones of secrecy. Forbidden knowledge. Off-limits by law, religion, or fear. He opened a new file, titled it The Alien Emperor's Pattern, and began to map the next theft. Chapter 3. Vault 7. The Geneva facility was buried beneath 6 stories of reinforced concrete and diplomatic silence. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was called Vault 7, a joint research archive operated by a coalition of nations too paranoid to trust each other and too afraid not to collaborate. Inside were the things no one was supposed to study: banned genetic prototypes, failed AI constructs, and the last physical copy of the 2041 Geneva Protocol on autonomous weapons, which had been quietly repealed and erased. At 2:11 local time, Vault 7 went dark. No alarms, no breach, just a sudden loss of telemetry, followed by a seismic ripple that registered as a microquake. By the time Swiss authorities reached the site, the elevator shaft ended in open air. The vault was gone, lifted clean from the earth. Lei Zhang watched the footage on loop. He sat in a mobile command unit parked outside the crater, flanked by 2 Swiss intelligence officers and a translator who hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. The footage was grainy, but the pattern was clear: a distortion in the sky, a pulse of light, and then absence. Same signature as Beijing, Lei said. Same altitude, same extraction vector. One of the officers leaned forward. You said he's collecting forbidden things. Why this? Lei didn't look away from the screen. Because it was hidden. Because it was denied to him. That's what he wants. The translator finally spoke. He's not just stealing monuments. He's stealing the world's secrets, Lei nodded. And he's escalating. On the Emperor's ship, Vault 7 hovered in a containment field beside the Forbidden City. Dravel circled the new acquisition, his expression unreadable. The vault's outer shell was scorched from atmospheric friction, but intact. Inside, its contents were already being catalogued by Rex's drones. Primitive, Dravel said, but ambitious. Rex floated beside him. They tried to bury it. That makes it valuable. Dravel smiled. Exactly. The more they hide, the more I want. He turned to the viewport, where Earth rotated slowly below. Prepare the next extraction. I want something sacred, something they swore never to open. In Brussels, a NATO emergency session convened behind closed doors. The thefts had crossed a line. Cultural loss was one thing, strategic compromise was another. Vault 7 had contained more than artifacts. It held data, prototypes, and secrets that could not be allowed to fall into alien hands. A name surfaced: Project Black Veil, a contingency plan for orbital denial, unfinished, unstable, but now, perhaps, necessary. Lay stood alone at the edge of the Geneva crater, wind tugging at his coat. He stared into the void and whispered, "He's not going to stop." Behind him, the translator approached. "They want you in Brussels." Lay didn't move. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who saw this coming." Lay turned to face her. "Then they're already too late." Chapter 4. Black Veil. The NATO command bunker beneath Brussels was colder than Lay expected. He sat at the far end of a steel conference table, surrounded by generals, analysts, and diplomats who spoke in clipped phrases and acronyms. No one mentioned the Forbidden City. No one said Vault 7. They spoke only of incursions and extractions. Lay had been summoned to advise on Project Black Veil, a contingency protocol designed to deny orbital access to Earth's most sensitive sites. It had never been tested. It wasn't even finished. A general slid a tablet toward him. "We want your opinion." Lay scanned the specs. Black Veil wasn't a weapon. It was a decoy system, an array of false monuments, fake vaults, and synthetic forbidden zones designed to lure the Emperor into taking the wrong things. "You want to bait him," Lay said. The general nodded. "We want to waste his time." Lay leaned back. "He doesn't steal randomly. He studies us. He knows what matters." A diplomat spoke up. "Then we need to make him believe something matters when it doesn't." Lay tapped the tablet. "You'll need more than architecture. You'll need narrative. You'll need secrecy." The room fell silent. In orbit, Emperor Dravel studied a new target. A monastery in Bhutan, remote, restricted, off limits to outsiders, the kind of place humans protected with silence. Rex hovered beside him. "It may be a decoy." Dravel smiled. "That makes it all the more interesting." He gestured toward the Harvester's cruise. "Prepare extraction. But this time, leave a message." At 4:03 Bhutan Standard Time, the monastery vanished. In its place, a single object was left behind, a black cube hovering 2 meters above the ground. It emitted no heat, no radiation, just a signal. Lay watched the footage from Brussels. The cube's message was simple. You cannot hide what you forbid. You cannot forbid what you do not understand. I will take what you treasure. Lay turned to the general. "He knows." The general frowned. "Knows what?" Lay stood. "That we're trying to trick him. That we're afraid." In a hidden chamber aboard the Emperor's ship, Rex reviewed the decoy's contents. The monastery had been empty. No relics, no secrets, just a shell. Rex turned to Dravel. "They're learning." Dravel nodded. "So are we." He opened a new file. Inside, a list of Earth's most classified locations, places not just forbidden but feared. He tapped one. "Next," he said, "we take the place they swore no one would ever enter." Chapter 5. The List. The cube left in Bhutan hadn't stopped transmitting. It pulsed every 6 hours, broadcasting the same message in a rotating sequence of languages. But now it had added something new. A list. Lei Zhang stood in the NATO command center, staring at the projection. The list was short. 5 locations. No explanation, no context, just names. Site R17, the Vault of Silence, K Delta Array, the Red Archive, and the Tomb of the Unnamed. Each name triggered a different reaction around the table. Some officials went pale, others whispered to aides. One man simply stood and left the room. Lay turned to the general. "Do we know what they are?" The general didn't answer. He just nodded to a technician who dimmed the lights and brought up a classified dossier. Site R17 was a decommissioned Soviet facility in the Ural Mountains, officially a weather station, unofficially a failed experiment in deep Earth surveillance. The site had been sealed since 1993 after a collapse killed the entire research team. The Vault of Silence was rumored to be beneath the Vatican. No one admitted it existed. No one denied it either. K Delta Array was a listening post in the South Pacific, built to monitor deep-sea anomalies. It had gone offline 5 years ago. No one had gone to check why. The Red Archive was Chinese. Even Lei had never heard of it. The Ministry of State Security refused to comment. The Tomb of the Unnamed was American, buried somewhere in Nevada. The only note in the file read, "Do not open under any circumstances." Lei exhaled. "He's not just escalating. He's taunting us." The general nodded. "He's daring us to protect them all." Lei looked around the room. "So, what's the plan?" The diplomat from France spoke first. "We secure the sites, fortify them, make it costly." The German delegate shook his head. "He's not deterred by cost. He doesn't care about casualties. He wants what we're most afraid to lose." The American representative leaned forward. "Then maybe we give him something to be afraid of." Lei frowned. "You're talking about retaliation." "We're talking about deterrence," the man said. "If he wants forbidden things, maybe we show him what happens when he takes them." In orbit, Emperor Dravel studied the list of Earth's reactions. He watched as troops mobilized, satellites repositioned, and bunkers were reinforced. He watched the panic, the secrecy, the lies. He turned to Warex. "They're trying to protect the unprotectable." Warex nodded. "They've begun to coordinate." "Even across borders," Dravel smiled. "Good. Let them unite. It will make the next theft more satisfying." He tapped the list. "Begin with the Red Archive. I want to see how far they'll go to keep a secret." In Beijing, alarms sounded in the Ministry of State Security. A satellite feed blinked out. Then another. Then a third. By the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. The Red Archive was gone, and in its place a second cube hovered in the air, humming softly. This one didn't broadcast a message. It simply counted down. Chapter 6, The Countdown. The cube in Beijing ticked audibly now. Every hour on the hour, it emitted a single chime, low, metallic, and unmistakably deliberate. No one could explain how it generated sound without speakers, or how it resisted every attempt to move, scan, or dismantle it. The Ministry of State Security had sealed off the area, but the sound carried for blocks. Lei Jiang stood in the observation chamber, watching the cube through reinforced glass. It hovered exactly 2 meters above the ground, unmoving, unblinking. The countdown on its surface had just ticked from 36 minutes to 35 minutes and 59 seconds. 36 hours. That's how long they had. Behind him, Director Langford paced. "We've confirmed it's not a weapon," she said. "No radiation. No heat. No emissions beyond the audio pulse." Lei didn't turn. "It's not a bomb. It's a message." Langford stopped. "Then what happens when the countdown ends?" Lei finally looked at her. "He takes the next one." In orbit, Emperor Dravel watched Earth rotate beneath him. The Red Archive had yielded little, just encrypted data and a few artifacts of cultural paranoia. But the reaction had been exquisite. Panic, silence, denial. The humans were beginning to understand the rules of his game. Rex hovered beside him. The countdown has begun. They've reinforced the remaining sites. Dravel smiled. Let them. It won't matter, he turned to the viewport. What do we know about Site R-17? Rex projected a schematic. Soviet era. Abandoned. Sealed after a collapse. No known survivors. Then it's perfect, Dravel said. Prepare the harvesters. In the Urals, a joint Russian-European task force had already arrived. Site R-17 was little more than a rusted hatch buried in snow and concrete. The original facility had collapsed decades ago, but the surrounding perimeter had been reactivated overnight. Drones buzzed overhead, tents sprouted like mushrooms, a mobile command center hummed with encrypted chatter. Major Irina Volkov, a veteran of the Arctic blackout, stood at the edge of the crater with a thermal scope. She didn't trust the satellites. She trusted her eyes. Nothing yet, she muttered. Her communications officer approached. We've got movement. High orbit, unidentified objects, no transponders. Volkov raised her scope. Sound the alarm. Lay watched the satellite feed from Brussels. New distortions had appeared over the Urals, same signatures as before, same shimmer, same silence. He turned to the general. It's happening. The general nodded. We're launching Black Veil Phase 2. Lay frowned. That's not a defense system. No, the general said. It's a decoy protocol. We're going to give him something else to steal. In orbit, the harvester ships descended. They pierced the clouds like blades, silent and silver, their hulls rippling with gravitational distortion. They hovered over Site R-17 for exactly 7 seconds. Then they stopped and turned. In Antarctica, a new signal pulsed from beneath the ice. A false vault, a synthetic forbidden zone built in secret by NATO engineers. It broadcast a single phrase in every known language. Access denied. Level Omega clearance required. Dravel paused. Rex blinked. It's not on the list, Dravel smiled. That's what makes it interesting. He turned from the viewport. Divert the harvesters. Let's see what they're hiding. Back in Brussels, Lay stared at the feed. The harvesters had changed course. He didn't cheer. He didn't speak. He just whispered, Now we find out if he can be fooled. Chapter 7. The Ice Vault. The harvesters' ships descended over Antarctica like blades of light. They hovered above the synthetic vault, an underground structure built in secret by NATO engineers, designed to mimic the architecture and electromagnetic signature of a forbidden site. The surface was marked with false warning glyphs, encrypted broadcasts, and a fabricated history of containment protocols. Inside, the vault was empty. No relics, no secrets, just reinforced walls and a single transmitter looping a message. Access denied. Omega clearance required. Emperor Dravel watched from orbit, expression unreadable. Rex hovered beside him. The vault matches forbidden criteria. Secrecy, isolation, denial. Dravel didn't respond. He studied the structure, then turned to his archivist. Begin extraction. In Brussels, Lei Zhong monitored the feed. The harvesters had locked onto the decoy. The countdown cube in Beijing had vanished, its timer reaching 0 without incident. No explosion, no signal, just silence. Lei leaned forward. He took the bait. The general beside him exhaled. Then Black Veil works. Lei didn't answer. He was watching something else. The harvesters hadn't left orbit. They were still hovering, still scanning. Inside the Emperor's ship, the synthetic vault was suspended in containment. Rex's drones probed its walls, searching for data, artifacts, anything of value. They found nothing. Rex turned to Dravel. "It's a shell." Dravel nodded. "They continue to learn." He walked the perimeter of the containment field, eyes narrowed. "They've begun to lie." Rex hesitated. "Do we retaliate?" Dravel smiled. "No, we escalate." He tapped a control panel. A new list appeared. Locations not on Earth, places in orbit, on the moon, beneath the sea. Let's see if they can fake what they haven't built. In Brussels, the feed went dark. Lay stared at the blank screen. The harvesters had vanished. The general turned to him. "Where are they going?" Lay didn't answer. He was already typing, pulling up orbital schematics, lunar installations, deep-sea research stations. He whispered, "He's changing the rules of the game." Chapter 8. The Lunar Scar. The moon was never meant to be a target. It was a symbol of exploration, of unity, of human ambition. The flags planted there were faded, the bases mostly dormant, the mining operations automated and quiet. But beneath the southern rim of the Shackleton crater, buried in a vault of regolith and ice, was Outpost K-99, a classified installation known only to a handful of governments. At 200 hours UTC, Outpost K-99 went dark. No distress signal, no seismic activity, just a sudden loss of telemetry, followed by a brief, inexplicable spike in gravitational flux. The automated systems rebooted 30 seconds later to find the entire facility gone. The crater was empty. Lei Zhang read the report in silence. He sat alone in a secure room beneath the European Space Agency's command center in Darmstadt, Germany. The feed from the moon was grainy, but unmistakable. The same shimmer, the same vanishing act, the same absence. He closed the file and looked up at the ESA director. "That wasn't on the list." The director nodded grimly. "We think that's the point." Lei stood. "He's improvising." In orbit, Emperor Dravel examined the lunar outpost, now suspended in containment. It was crude, functional, no ornamentation, no ceremony. But it was hidden, and it was forbidden. Rex hovered beside him, visibly agitated. "They're adapting, feeding us decoys, false vaults, synthetic secrets." Dravel nodded. "Yes, they've learned to lie very well." He circled the outpost slowly. "But they haven't learned restraint. They still hide things, still bury them, still fear them." Rex hesitated. "What if they stop? What if they make everything public?" Dravel smiled. "Then I'll take what they love instead." In Washington, D.C., the president convened an emergency session of the Security Council. The theft of the lunar outpost had triggered panic across the intelligence community. If orbital assets were no longer safe, nothing was. Satellites, stations, civilian habitats, all vulnerable. A general spoke first. "We need to consider kinetic options." A diplomat pushed back. "We don't even know where his ship is." Another voice cut through the noise. "Then we find someone who does." All eyes turned to the far end of the table, where a woman in civilian clothes sat silently. Her name was Dr. Amina Solano, a former astrophysicist turned whistleblower. She had once worked on Project Horizon, a now-defunct attempt to track non-terrestrial anomalies. She slid a file across the table. "You're looking in the wrong direction." The general frowned. "Explain." She tapped the file. "He's not orbiting Earth. He's orbiting the Sun." Chapter 9. The Heliocentric Ghost. Dr. Amina Solano had been right. The Emperor's ship wasn't circling Earth. It was tethered to a solar orbit, just ahead of Earth's trajectory, riding the gravitational slipstream like a parasite, invisible to most telescopes, masked by solar radiation. But not to her. She stood in the observation dome of the ESA's Deep Space Array in La Palma, eyes fixed on the filtered feed. A dark silhouette drifted across the sun's corona, too symmetrical to be natural, too still to be debris. "There," she said, pointing. "That's him." Lei Zhong leaned in beside her. "How long has he been there?" Amina didn't blink. "Longer than we've known he existed." In orbit, Emperor Dravel stood before a projection of Earth's orbital infrastructure, satellites, stations, relays, habitats, all spinning in delicate balance, all vulnerable. Rex hovered nearby. "They've located us." Dravel nodded. "Let them look. It changes nothing." He gestured to a cluster of orbital assets near Lagrange Point 2. "What is this?" Rex looked closely. A civilian telescope array, privately funded, used for deep space observation. Dravel smiled. "Forbidden to whom?" Rex hesitated. "To governments. It's off limits to state surveillance." Dravel turned. "Then it qualifies." Back on Earth, Lei and Amina briefed the Security Council. "He's not targeting military assets," Amina said. "He's targeting blind spots." "Places we've chosen not to look," Lei added. "Or places we've agreed not to touch." The president leaned forward. "So, what's next?" Amina tapped the screen. "The L2 array. It's a civilian observatory, privately owned. Off-limits by treaty." The general scoffed. "It's just a bunch of telescopes." Lei shook his head. "It's what they represent. Independent vision, uncontrolled observation. That's what he fears." At Lagrange Point 2, the observatory crew had no warning. One moment they were calibrating instruments. The next, the stars blinked out. A shadow passed over the array, vast, silent, and impossibly close. The crew barely had time to send a burst transmission before the entire station vanished. In Brussels, the message arrived too late. A single line of text broadcast from the L2 array moments before its disappearance. "He's watching the sun." Lei stared at the screen. "He's not just orbiting it. He's studying it." Amina nodded slowly. "He's mapping our blind spots, one by one." In orbit, Dravel stood before a new containment field. Inside, the L2 array, its telescopes still pointed outward, frozen mid-observation. Rex hovered beside him. "They're adapting faster than expected." Dravel didn't respond. He was focusing on the sun. "Prepare the next phase," he said. "It's time they understood what it means to forbid the truth." Chapter 10. The Observatory That Vanished. The L2 array had been gone for 48 hours. No signal, no debris, just a blank patch of sky where it used to be. But something had changed. The stars behind it, once catalogued, mapped, and named, were now wrong. Not missing, not moved, just subtly altered. Spectral readings didn't match archived data. Light curves had shifted. A red giant in the Carina constellation now pulsed at a different frequency. A binary system near Proxima Centauri had lost its wobble. Dr. Amina Solano stared at the data in disbelief. "He's not just stealing observatories," she said. "He's rewriting what they saw." Lei Jiang stood beside her, silent. "He's erasing our record of the universe," she whispered. In orbit, Emperor Dravel stood before a new projection. It wasn't a map of Earth. It was a map of what Earth believed. Star charts, gravitational models, cosmic background radiation, all compiled from human observatories, satellites, and telescopes. Rex hovered nearby. "They've begun to notice the discrepancies." Dravel nodded. "Good. Let them question everything." He gestured to the projection. "This is their truth, their map of the cosmos, their story of where they are." He turned to Rex. "Now we take that." In Geneva, the United Nations convened an emergency session. The thefts had escalated from monuments to secrets to knowledge itself. Delegates argued over terminology. Was it sabotage, invasion, epistemic warfare? Lay stood before them, exhausted but clear. He's not trying to conquer Earth, he said. He's trying to unmoor it. A delegate from Kenya leaned forward. From what? Lay looked around the chamber. From certainty, from history, from the idea that we know where we are in the scheme of things. In a quiet lab in Chile, a junior astronomer named Luis Ortega stared at a blinking console. The Atacama Array had just picked up a signal, faint, fragmented, but unmistakably artificial. It wasn't from the Emperor, it was from the L2 Array. A single burst transmission, compressed, encrypted, labeled with a timestamp from 20 minutes before the theft. Luis played it. A voice crackled through the static, panicked, human. He's not alone. There's something else. The message cut off. Luis stared at the screen. Then he picked up the phone. Chapter 11. The Signal Beneath. Luis Ortega hadn't slept in 2 days. The transmission from the vanished L2 array had been brief, just 6 seconds of compressed audio, but it had changed everything. The voice was human, the tone was panicked, and the final phrase still echoed in his ears. He's not alone. There's something else. Luis sat in the control room of the Atacama Array, surrounded by blinking consoles and silent colleagues. The signal had been triangulated. It hadn't come from the Emperor's ship. It had come from beneath it. In orbit, Emperor Dravel stood before the containment field, housing the L2 array. He hadn't spoken in hours. Rex hovered nearby, reviewing the observatory's final logs. There was a transmission, he said. A burst signal. Unauthorized. Dravel turned slowly. To whom? Rex hesitated. To Earth. But it wasn't directed. It was a warning. Dravel stepped closer to the containment field. From one of the humans. Rex shook his head. No, from something inside the array. In Brussels, Lei Zhang and Dr. Amina Solano reviewed the signal metadata. It's not just a distress call, Amina said. It's a location marker. Lei frowned. For what? She zoomed in on the waveform. It's pointing to a region of space we've never mapped. A blind spot behind the sun. A gravitational shadow. Lei leaned forward. You think something's hiding there? Amina didn't answer. She just tapped the screen. In a secure chamber beneath the European Space Agency, a new task force assembled. Codename: Project Atlas. Mission: investigate the gravitational anomaly behind the sun. Deploy a probe. Confirm the presence of a second entity. Luis Ortega was recruited as the signal analyst. Lei Zhang as the strategic advisor. Amina Solano as mission lead. They had 72 hours before the probe launched. On the Emperor's ship, containment alarms blared. The L2 array had begun to pulse, slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Rex floated to the console. It's broadcasting again. Dravel stared at the observatory. To whom? Rex didn't answer. Because this time the signal wasn't going to Earth. It was going deeper. Chapter 12. Atlas. The probe launched at dawn. It was small, no larger than a motorcycle, but packed with the most advanced shielding, telemetry, and encryption Earth could muster. Its destination, the gravitational blind spot behind the sun, a region known as the Solar Atlas, where light never reaches and signals vanish without echo. Dr. Amina Solano watched the launch from the ESA control room, arms folded, jaw tight. Beside her, Lei Zhang monitored the data stream. Luis Ortega sat behind them, headphones on, listening for anything that didn't belong. The probe cleared Earth's orbit in minutes. Then it vanished into silence. In orbit, Emperor Dravel turned from the containment field. Rex floated beside him, agitated. "They've launched something." Dravel nodded. "I know." Rex hesitated. "Should we intercept?" Dravel stared at the sun. "No. Let them attempt to discover what is reality." Rex blinked. "Why?" Dravel turned slowly. "Because they won't like what they find." The probe entered the Atlas at 3:17 UTC. For the first 6 minutes, it transmitted nothing. Then suddenly it began to stream data, erratic, fragmented, but unmistakably artificial. Luis Ortega leaned forward. "We've got a signal." Amina snapped to attention. "From what?" Luis adjusted the filters. "Not the Emperor. Something else." Lay frowned. "Another ship?" Luis shook his head. "No, it's not moving. It's anchored." The signal resolved into a pattern, pulses of light and gravity, encoded in a language no one recognized, but the rhythm was familiar. It matched the heartbeat of the L2 array. The same pulse, the same cadence. Amina whispered, "It's the same entity." Lay leaned closer. "Then the Emperor didn't steal the array." He delivered it. In orbit, Dravel stood alone in the observation chamber. The stars beyond the sun shimmered unnaturally, bent by forces older than light. He watched the Atlas flicker, then stabilize. Rex entered quietly. "They've made contact." Dravel didn't turn. "Then it begins." Rex hesitated. "What begins?" Dravel smiled. "The world they were never meant to see." Chapter 13. The Courier. The probe drifted deeper into the Atlas. Its sensors strained against gravitational noise. Its shielding groaned under solar distortion. But the signal was clear now, no longer a pulse, but a pattern. A lattice of encoded coordinates, frequencies, and something else. A name. Not a human name. Not a word. A designation. The custodian. Luis Ortega stared at the data stream. "It's not a ship," he said. "It's a vault." Amina Solano leaned in. "A vault of what?" Lei Zhong answered without looking up. "Of everything we weren't supposed to know." In orbit, Emperor Dravel stood before the containment field, housing the L2 array. He had stopped speaking. Rex hovered nearby, uncertain. "The humans have found the custodian." Dravel didn't move. Rex continued. "They'll try to access it. They'll try to open it." Dravel turned slowly. "Then they will learn why it was sealed." He stepped forward, placed a hand on the containment glass. "I was never the thief," he said. "I was the lock." Chapter 14. The Forbidden Truth. The custodian was not a machine. It was a construct, half architecture, half memory, anchored in the Atlas like a scar. The probe's cameras showed impossible geometry, corridors that folded into themselves, inscriptions that rewrote their own meaning, doors that opened into silence. Inside, something stirred, a presence. Not alive, not dead, a remnant of something older than stars. The probe's feed began to degrade, static, then symbols, then a voice. "You were warned. You were spared. You were protected." Amina's hands trembled. "It's talking to us." Lei leaned forward. "No, it's talking to him." In orbit, alarms screamed. The containment fields around the stolen monuments began to fail. The Forbidden City flickered. Vault 7 cracked. The L2 array began to disintegrate, its components unraveling into light. Rex panicked. "They're destabilizing." "We're losing containment." Dravel didn't move. "It's begun." Rex turned. "What have you done?" Dravel looked down at Earth. "I delivered the keys." They opened the door. Chapter 15. The Reckoning. The custodian unfolded, not in space but in perception. Across Earth, telescopes failed, satellites blinked out, the stars themselves seemed to shift, as if the sky were being rewritten. In Beijing, the crater where the Forbidden City once stood began to glow. In Geneva, the site of Vault 7 cracked open, releasing a column of light. In the Urals, Site R17 pulsed with seismic energy, then went still. All across the world, the stolen places began to return, reassembled, restructured, but different, modified. In Brussels, Lay stood before the Security Council. "We thought he was stealing from us," he said, "but he was collecting, preserving, preparing," Amina added, "and now he's giving it all back." The president leaned forward. "Why?" Lay looked up at the screen, where the custodian's signal now filled every channel. "Because we're not the only ones watching." Chapter 16. The Return. The Emperor's ship began to break apart, not from damage, but by design. Its hull peeled open like a chrysalis, revealing a lattice of light and memory. The stolen monuments drifted free, descending toward Earth in controlled arcs. The Forbidden City returned to Beijing, its walls humming with unfamiliar energy. Vault 7 reappeared in Geneva, its contents rearranged, its secrets exposed. The L2 array reassembled itself in orbit, its telescopes now pointed not outward but inward, at Earth. In the Atlas, the custodian spoke one final time. "You have seen what was forbidden. Now you must decide what to forget." The signal ended, the probe disintegrated, and the stars went silent. Epilogue. The things we chose to forget. 3 months after the sky went silent, the world was still rebuilding. The Forbidden City stood once more in Beijing, but its stones were subtly wrong, older in some places, newer in others. The layout had shifted by a few degrees, aligning not with the cardinal directions, but with something else. No one could explain it. No one tried. Vault 7 was now open to the public. Its contents had been scattered, decrypted, and leaked. The secrets it once held, genetic blueprints, failed AI prototypes, erased treaties, had become part of the global record. Some nations collapsed under the weight of what was revealed. Others simply denied it all. The L2 array remained in orbit, but its telescopes no longer pointed outward. They had been reoriented, fixed on Earth, as if waiting for something to happen. Lei Jiang retired quietly. He returned to a small apartment in Hangzhou, where he spent his days walking the riverbanks and his nights staring at the stars. He no longer trusted what he saw, but he looked anyway. Dr. Amina Solano declined every interview. She deleted her research, burned her notes, and disappeared into the Andes. Some say she joined a private observatory. Others say she stopped looking up altogether. Luis Ortega stayed in Chile. He rebuilt the Atacama array by hand, one dish at a time. He never spoke of the signal again. But every night he left one receiver pointed at the Atlas, just in case. The Emperor was never seen again. His ship dissolved into solar orbit, its fragments scattering like ash across the heliosphere. Some believe he was a messenger, others a jailer. A few believe he was a warning, but no one knows for sure, because the custodian never spoke again. In Geneva, a new monument was erected. No flags, no names, just a black cube hovering silently above a reflecting pool. It bore no inscription, no explanation, just a single line etched into the stone beneath it. What is forbidden is not what we hide. It is what we are not ready to understand. People came from all over the world to see it. Some prayed, some protested, some just stood in silence. And above them the stars watched, unchanged and unknowable. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.